Hello and welcome to this special episode of Let's Talk Medtech. I'm here with Naomi Schwartz, VP of Regulatory Strategy at Medcrypt, a team of medical device experts who are laser focused on supporting MDMs and bringing cybersecurity to the next generation of healthcare technology. Naomi, thanks for coming back to the program because you've been up here before.
Thanks for inviting me back.
Sure, sure. So when we were first trying to connect a couple of months ago, right after the cyber attack at Stryker, since then there have been two other top 100 medical device companies that have come under fire from cyber attacks: Intuitive Surgical and Medtronic. Let's just jump right into it. My question is, why are we seeing so many cyber attacks in the medtech space so closely together against these larger companies?
Well, I mean, one thing to note about it is in all three cases, corporate IT infrastructure was the target. So maybe it was just low hanging fruit. Maybe it was somebody was searching specifically for something in that infrastructure area. To note, though, these are all critical infrastructure companies, right? Healthcare is a critical infrastructure area, and the United States government has some pretty serious concerns about that infrastructure being attacked. So why now? Why these three companies? Why medtech in general? Well, we know in the case of Stryker that the organization that attacked them is associated with, how closely affiliated is unclear, the Iranian government. So geopolitics definitely comes into play. I don't think we know enough about who attacked Intuitive and Medtronic to get into too much detail about,
Sure.
what is the threat behavior going on behind all of that, who did it, who's behind it. Shiny Hunters, who are the hacking group who claimed to have stolen Medtronic data. um, where are they from? Where are they attacking from? I don't know that information. But in general, I would say that companies in this infrastructure area should be very sensitive to the fact that they are being targeted. It's clear they're being targeted. It's overt.
Mhm.
They should be using any information they can get out of the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council, HSEC, or HISAC, or MedISAO. These are information sharing and analysis organizations intended to gather this kind of threat intel. They should be using that information to help them internally evaluate their own systems, perform an internal cyber audit, and see if their own IT infrastructure is at risk in similar ways. Um, so so whatever else they take away from this, it's a learning moment of we're probably not protected well enough, no matter how well protected we think we are. Go back and reevaluate, right? Um, what exactly is pushing all of this? Unclear. But these are all companies that have substantial, capital. So
Sure.
they're targets for a reason. They've got money. They've got the means to deal with something. And whether there's ransomware involved or not, whether there's some attempt to get money out of them or not, which is unclear in some cases,
Sure.
that may be part of the reasoning. But it may just be geopolitical. It may be hacktivism. It may be target of opportunity. What that means is if you are in a similar infrastructure sector, make sure that you're not a target of opportunity. Lock everything down. Put bars on your windows. Make sure it's obvious from the outside looking in that this is going to be harder. Move on to the easier target next door, right? Like if you think of the castle analogy, if you look at my front door, it's not obvious that I've got deadbolts and locking bolts and other things in place. But if you tried to break in, that would become clearer the more effort you put in. It's not going to be straightforward. Um, don't live right next to them anymore, but somebody I used to live near never
Mhm.
locked their front door at all. And sometimes they just left it wide open. Like that's a target of opportunity. If I'm probing, if I'm wandering through the neighborhood looking for what's easy, I'm going to go for the easy targets. So med tech companies historically have maybe been behind some of the other sectors like banking.
Yeah.
That makes them a target of opportunity. Banking is a lot harder to go after because they've been securing things for a lot longer.
Why do you think that's the case? And that kind of brings me to my next question. How does medtech compare to other industries with the protection and handling of cybersecurity and just cyber threats? Why do you think we're behind in a sense? Or what's your take on that? Just curious.
Well, I mean, sort of tiered, right? You've got
Sure.
banking, and they are highly regulated. They've got a
Hmm.
lot of money in play. They have a lot of highly sensitive data. And so they've had protective measures in play for a very, very long time, like,
Hmm.
you know, encrypting telegraphy, like, long time. So the way that money transfers used to work, they've had to do some encryption on that for, you know, way longer than other industries because they're sharing really, really sensitive information and they're sharing transfer of financial, assets back and forth. They were driven to have security earliest of any critical infrastructure I can think of. Other critical infrastructure areas may have lagged behind similarly to medtech. Are we completely out there and, like, really just not doing anything? No, we're not. And that comes clearly out of what we see with the responses from Medtronic, Intuitive Surgical, and Stryker. They clearly have coordinated vulnerability disclosure policies. They're on their websites, so that's public facing. They talked about their incident response plans, and they talked about different stages of incident response that they were in over time with the media. You can only do that if you have a plan in the first place. And quite frankly, it doesn't work very well if you haven't exercised it, which I believe these companies have done. So they're not immature. They're not as mature as they could be. But when you're comparing them to banking, it's
Yeah.
a different level of attention and scrutiny that has been placed, and there's a different level of governance and compliance that has been involved. They do have similar levels of risk, though. They have reputational, financial, you know, protected health information being breached risks that they don't want to see actually affected. So they're maybe more behind on operational technology security than on IT security, but it was their IT infrastructure that was hit. So, getting up to speed on OT security only really scratches the itch of FDA or European regulatory bodies under MDR and IVDR. It's not really going to help them with the IT infrastructure issues that could affect them with the SEC, a different regulatory body here in the US.
Sometimes it seems as if, and I'm speaking anecdotally, but it seems as if cybersecurity is perhaps an afterthought in medtech. But now we're seeing all of these advanced AI tools such as Claude, Anthropics, Mythos, which was too dangerous to be released. I was doing some research on it, and it just said that it was just way too dangerous because it's very easy to hack into to other systems. But um, because we're seeing some of these AI tools, do you think cybersecurity is going from, oh, it's something to worry about or something that we kind of need to have or we really need to have? Or is it going to, okay, now this is a top priority with the advent of all of these AI tools coming out? Yep.
The
I know
you
that was a loaded question too.
This it is absolutely a loaded question, and it's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, does this become the inflection point that finally motivates people and lights a fire under their backsides? I don't know. I mean, Mythos is being very tightly controlled, and who gets access to it is limited, assuming that they don't get hacked and somebody gains more access, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is a layered problem. Um, Tools like Mythos can be developed by anybody who understands how the development process works, though. And that
Mhm.
means that just because that one's constrained by the organizations who have developed it does not mean that there isn't some threat actor somewhere else in the world who decides that they want to develop something like that. They figure out the underlying concepts and they go and do it and then they deploy it. Quite frankly, I would be shocked if that weren't already happening. Um, is this the game changer? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, there are groups of hackers who have been having conversations about that, at DEF CON and other conferences. They're digging into it and they're saying, yeah, you should be worried, but we're already using tools like that to help defend. So it's like that Mad magazine, the two crow characters, one's white and one's black, and they're constantly pulling out bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger guns. I
Mhm.
used to work in electronic warfare. It's the same thing. I pull out a new jammer, you pull out a new countermeasure, you pull out, more and more escalated, more complex technology. Can we always find a way to mitigate it? So far, we've largely been able to do that. Are we going to start using AI to help us mitigate the threat posed by AI? Absolutely. It's not the technology that's the problem. It's the motivation and the fact that there are reasons to be motivated to do it. That's the problem. People will always find a way. Or to paraphrase, Jurassic Park, nature finds a way. Right? We will find a way if what we want is to attack something. We'll find a way. That's what we do. That's what people with analytical and technical backgrounds like mine do. That's why we are hired to do what we do.
Okay.
Um, but fundamentally, this isn't more dangerous than other technological advancements we've seen. It comes down with AI to a question of perception and to a question of ethics. Are we thinking about the ethics that underlie how we're going to employ AI and how we're going to teach people to interact with it? That's a separate topic for another day. But there are entire research groups at universities dedicated to questions like that. And they deserve some attention for how AI is being applied more broadly in medtech, because there are a lot of open questions about that. But another day.
Yes.
Um,
That's awesome. I want to switch gears for 1 second, and I want to talk a little bit about Medcrypt and what you offer your clients. Let's kind of bring it back to something a little more positive. you know, talk a little bit about Medcrypt and how you help your clients.
Absolutely. So we have a combination of services that we provide, and I lead the regulatory services side of the company, where we're helping manufacturers get investigational devices approved for clinical trials, where we're helping medical device manufacturers bring their innovation to market through clearance or approval in the U.S., through MDR CE marking in Europe, anywhere else in the world where there's a regulatory infrastructure, which is most of the world. We understand the standards that are being applied, the laws that are in place, um, the extra context that people aren't thinking about, because you also have to scratch the privacy itch. It's not just the regulatory infrastructure for the medical device itself. So we're helping companies get their innovation through those sticky wickets with the regulatory bodies. But that also means at times we raise a flag and say you have technology debt and you need to solve it. And we can help people understand some of the trade offs. I could choose this method, or this method. What are the design balances that I need to consider? What are the benefits and risks of any one given approach, given what we know about the regulators? So we have had an amazing streak of 100% of our projects that have gone through FDA that have followed our advice have gotten cleared or approved. That's really, really challenging to achieve. And it speaks to the amount of experience we've got with these different bodies, and the number of times that we've been through this. Dozens of clients, 50, 70, 100 different devices that have been cleared or approved in the last few years, since 524B of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was passed, which really requires the cybersecurity to be robust. The other elements of what we do are some software as a service efforts, and these include software bill of materials, vulnerability analysis tools, one called Helm, that is really evaluating the software components built into a device and saying, what risks do these pose? Are they out of date? Are they unpatched? Do they not have the appropriate licensing? So you're probably going to have a legal problem if you bring it to market. All of these different issues that companies need to be aware of. Awareness leads to protection. Protection leads to a secure, safe, and effective device. Um, in addition to that, we have a new project called Medcrypt Security Intelligence, which offers people an opportunity to put their cybersecurity documentation, their quality system processes into a database, and it analyzes them against different standards, the JSP2, 81001-5-1, which is law in some places like Japan, and says, how mature are you with respect to these standards? And
Mm.
we can compare you to a baseline of other members of industry to say, What places do you need to be more robust? Maybe your post-market management plan is inadequate. Maybe you don't have a coordinated vulnerability disclosure process, which we mentioned for Stryker, Intuitive, and Medtronic. Really important. A researcher wants to know how to tell you something's wrong. You want to have something that they can push that says, hey, I know something. I need to talk to you. And you want it to be done privately, not in front of the press.
Sure.
Sometimes there's no choice because there's no easy way to access a company. And so a researcher just comes out at Black Hat and says, look what I did. They don't do that unless they have no other choice because they want to keep it private until somebody can do something about a problem. But if you don't give them access, guess what? They're going to talk about what they've done. So we help companies with that. We actually run the MedISAO program, and that has a vulnerability disclosure opportunity built into it. So anyone who is a member of MedISAO can have us run their CVD program for them, which means we help them interact with the penetration testers. In some cases, we already know the people who are involved in the testing and the research, and we help them understand how to do that delicate dance of confirming that a finding is real, assessing how much risk it actually poses, communicating it to not only the users of the product, but the regulator if you need to, CISA if you need to, ICS cert, other elements of the federal government, law enforcement if that's appropriate, and also the rest of the community. Threat intelligence is important. If we share the fact that we know an attack of certain types is happening, we can help each other understand, oh, wow, I really need to check my mobile device management configuration to prevent another Stryker-like attack, right?
Right, right, right. Correct, correct. What are some of the trends that you're seeing with your clients right now? I know that's kind of a broad question, but is there anything that you're seeing, any connective tissues or any trends that you're seeing from your work with them?
What we're seeing, trend-wise is sort of paired, right? We're seeing FDA putting their foot down and saying, "We're really going to leverage the statutory authority that Congress gave us in 524B, insisting that companies can't get to market if they haven't demonstrated secure today, secure, safe, and effective today, but also that I have a plan to ensure that in the future." So FDA is putting their foot down and saying, we really need this. And we're seeing manufacturers realizing, oh, what I've been doing in the past is not enough. Maybe it wasn't state of the art, which is a separate problem, and can cause additional headaches in the post market. Um, I need to up my game and I need to actually have appropriately credentialed and skilled employees working for me who can manage these issues, who can design things securely. So we're seeing, I think, a sea change between what the regulator is insisting upon and what manufacturers have been able to get through before that is no longer flying. So we're really seeing companies that have major tech debt standing up and saying, okay, it's time that we stop this. This is just not going to work anymore. And they are implementing appropriate levels of security. And they are implementing, significant new design thought. And they're bringing more people into the space who have the kind of background that can do secure by design. But that also means we need more people to join this realm and to work in this field. So every time I hear, a new person's graduating with a bachelor's or a master's or higher, but you don't need higher, higher levels of education in cybersecurity, I'm like, join Medtech, come join us. Somebody years ago asked me, like, where can I find more people who
Mm.
can do this kind of work? And I said, go steal people from defense who are unhappy with their work or are tired of, carrying around the baggage that comes with a clearance because those
Sure.
people have the right skills. They have the right analytical mindset. They may have more maturity in cybersecurity because, kind of have to.
Yeah.
Defense needs to be better protected for obvious reasons. Go hire people from those spaces who are tired. Yeah, they don't have med tech experience. Quite frankly, I don't think that matters. And so we should be cross pollinating with people from other critical infrastructure areas, bringing them over and, getting them up to speed on what's different about med tech. Nothing is that different about med tech. Let's be honest.
Mhm.
We can hire people from anywhere and teach them the nuances of guidance and standards and, how do the regulatory bodies function. What I can't do is take a reg affairs person and teach them technical cybersecurity unless they already have the right analytical skills, mindset, and thinking, and hopefully some education. That's a lot harder.
Awesome, awesome. I want to switch gears now, and I want to get into a portion of the conversation where I'm sure we'll have people bookmark this part. But I want to talk about some of the regulatory changes that we're seeing with cybersecurity via FDA. I know that's very dense. I saved it for the end of our conversation because I know people are going to want to bookmark this and kind of dissect it and talk about it. So go, shoot.
Sure. So FDA has emphatically stated, and I want to bring this back to the front,
Sure.
they do not accept promissory notes. So they said this at the AdvaMed Cybersecurity Summit last fall. Please don't promise us you're going to fix your problems in 2 or 3 years. We want to see change today. Does that mean it has to be overnight? It doesn't work that way. It takes years to develop a medical device, sometimes as many as 5 years in the overall development pipeline. So it's not going to change overnight. But if you weren't doing the work in 2023 when the guidance came out, you better get caught up to speed pretty fast because a 5-year development life cycle says you're 3 years behind now, right? And state of the art is moving. It's a moving target. FDA is expecting people's cybersecurity, along with any other technology, to be state of the art. When it's not state of the art, you have situations unrelated to cybersecurity, like what happened to Philips. They had non state of the art foam in their respirators that caused some serious failures, degradation of the material, caused death. That's unacceptable from a patient's perspective,
Sure.
from a healthcare provider's perspective, and quite frankly, from FDA's. So the regulators saying, we want state of the art and we want it now. If you walk in the door and you tell me you've got something with 2020 level of technological prowess, that's not state of the art in 2026. If you tell me it's 2010, whoa, go back to the drawing board, guy. You can't do that anymore. They've been more flexible in the past. That's going to stop. They're just not tolerating, excuses and complaints and, oh, it's going to cost a bunch. Well, we know that. But, the hospitals can't pay more. So somebody somewhere is going to have to do the investment, and the hospitals are underwater trying to manage what they've already got. So it's not like we can say, give them something insecure and they'll protect it. No, they won't. No, look at what the University of Vermont medical system went through. And they've been very, very open in discussing what happened to them. Some of their least secure devices are the ones that operated through their attack because they had them sandboxed. They can protect elements if they're really, 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 really serious about it, and they did. Their IVD systems and their imaging systems did not go down because they don't trust them. That should be a statement to IVD manufacturers, and I came out of that group at FDA of reviewing IVDs, so I can tell you, like, oh, that area's got some maturity problems.
Mhm.
The same is true with imaging. You've got 25-year-old imaging systems. You're not going to bolt on security to those things after the fact, right? But if you're bringing something new to market, please don't walk in the door with 2015 technology for security because it's not going to fly. That is what FDA is saying. And if FDA is saying it, I promise you, Europe is not far behind. Japan is not far behind. Singapore, China, South Korea, Brazil are not far behind. The UK, Australia, New Zealand are all jumping on the bandwagon. So we see FDA deficiency letters that say not good enough. We see notified body deficiency letters from Europe, not good enough. And they're getting very specific. And that means that if you know you're not up to snuff, it's time to get a maturity assessment and understand where your gaps are. If you don't do that, the next time you submit, you are going to get a big, ugly, marked up red letter that says, no, not today.
Wow. Wow. Well, Naomi, thank you for coming on to Let's Talk MedTech. I appreciate this. And guys, this was short notice. We did this out of the blue. We just this is a quick episode, but we felt that this was a timely conversation that we needed to have about cyber attacks and cybersecurity, given what's happened with Stryker, Intuitive, and Medtronic. Once again, Naomi, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Let's Talk Medtech. Thanks again to our guest, Naomi Schwartz from Medcrypt. Be sure to follow us at mddionline.com for all of your medtech news. And finally, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to Let's Talk MedTech on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcast.